Good morning, members. Welcome to Audit and Risk Committee, Thursday the 30th of April. Before I start, I would just like to thank Councillor Geddes for stepping in for me at the last meeting. So thank you very much for that, Councillor Geddes. I would also like to welcome Claire Corner and our external auditor. Thank you for being here. Any apologies? No? Apologies?
Good morning. We have 9 members present. We are quorate. I have an apology from Councillor Stitt. Councillor Scobie is not present but may be along later.
Thank you. Declarations of interest? Sorry, I missed that, Councillor Thompson. Is it okay? Maybe we'll be finished, was probably what you said. Okay. Can we move on to item 3, please, which was the minute of the last meeting? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, item number 4. Members are being asked to consider the external auditor's interim management letter, which you should have a separate copy of. So I'm pleased that the review has been carried out by PwC, and the Council's systems and financial controls indicated that the sound control framework, so I'm pleased to hear that that's the case. Would you like to take us through the report, or do you just want to take questions?
I think pretty much happy to go through the questions from a high-level perspective. Obviously, we came out as part of our planning process. We've looked back at control issues identified in previous years to make sure that those have been closed out. We've identified 1 new control issue in the current year. There were 17 actions brought forward, with now 11 having been agreed as closed, 2 closed subject to verification, and 4 which are in progress. One of the items that were closed subject to verification has subsequently been verified between ourselves and internal audit, so it is now just 1 closed subject to verification. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, before I open it to the floor, can I just ask one question regarding page 7, please? It's the raising of purchase orders. And it says at the end of the second paragraph, there's a risk that inappropriate orders may be raised. And I understand that we're now in April 2015, so I'm just wondering where we are with the full implementation of PCOS, according to what's on the paper.
Yeah, happy to take that, Chair. As reflected in the management response, we've taken a paper to the Corporate Business Support Group. PCOS is the preferred route for all raising of purchase orders. We can't actually use Integra directly for raising of purchase orders now. If it's not used through PCOS, there's actually a route where you have to actually take advice through the corporate procurement route or through finance. So we're actually trying to direct all invoice raising through PCOS from now on. So it's something that we're really trying to hammer through all service departments. So that is the route that we're really trying to use more and more through the council. So there really is that drive there. So we're minimising anything that's out with PCOS from now on, as well as improving the controls. It also helps the council's PI and helps to support the local economy, because the more we get through PCOS, the quicker we get invoices paid as well, because there is that delay there where invoices aren't going through PCOS, because the invoices tend to kind of go about through the system for a number of days before they actually get picked up if we're not using PCOS. So the more we get through PCOS, the quicker invoices get paid, so that benefits the local economy as well. So we're starting to make sure that more and more go through that PCOS route. So that's something we're starting to improve on as we go forward. So that's continuing to move forward at the minute.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, I take it that it's easy for local contractors and businesses to actually be involved with the use of that.
Yeah, again, that's something that we're further developing. That it's becoming easier as we go forward. We're further developing that.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor McKee, you first.
Hi, thanks, Chair. He beat me to the first question, so I'll pass on. The other thing I just want to comment on, page 21, retention of support and documents for leavers. And the management response is staff have been given updated training on quality control, etc. Is there no something we could put in place where regular training is given to staff and keeping updating, even if it's annually or something like that? It's just that it's concerning that sometimes staff have to get specialist training and it doesn't always seem to be done.
Would you like to answer that?
I mean, this did reflect a specific control weakness, but I mean, we're talking about the Pay and Employment Services here, which is a service that does get regular training and a separate report and agenda. You're actually talking about a service that's received through payroll recognition of kind of charter awards recently, and that reflects the development of that service, and training's been a real part of recognition there. So it's actually received real development, real training over the last couple of years. So there is real training, there is real recognition and development of the team there. So there is recognition of that service developing and improving as we go ahead. So there's regular training happening at the moment. So that was a specific control weakness. It's been addressed, but there's ongoing development that we're continuing to see. So that's something that's happening.
Do you wish to come back, Councillor McKee?
Aye, that's fine. I think it's finance that's getting the slag in here, but I think it's something that should maybe be done throughout the council, not just in finance, where people are getting new duties and are not necessarily getting the training to carry them out properly. Hence, we're getting mistakes being made. It's maybe something we need to look at more broadly.
Derek, would you like to come back on that?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Councillor McKee, for your question. You're quite right. A lot of new systems continually being developed within the organisation, and therefore the staff capability and skill base is crucial to ensure the effectiveness of these, and therefore Council has recently launched its flexible learning programme for staff, and therefore can assure all members that that's something that we will ensure is given highest priority, and more than happy in due course through the Policy and Resources Committee to update members on the training that's in place for all staff across the Council. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do you want to specifically come back on your service, Paul, or are you quite happy with the answer that's been given?
Quite happy with that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bell?
Thank you very much, Chair. It's obviously page 17 of 70. It's to do with equal pay. Obviously, there's been a bit of press recently regarding equal pay across the region and the unsettled claims and ongoing issues. Obviously, about revisit part of the final audit. I just wonder what the update from the Council is going to be, because it's quite a serious issue. I've had a number of constituents contact me regarding this issue over a period of time.
Paul?
As reflected in the management response, we've made significant progress of late in settling with the known cases. I think the issue that Councillor Bell is relating to is those additional cases that have come forward as late, which is not really part of the issue that I think the auditors will be reviewing at the year end. I think that's a separate issue. It may well be something that the Council will report on subsequently, but I don't think it's a specific issue that's referred to in the audit review that's reflected in this paper.
Thank you for that. I can tell Councillor Bell that there was a question asked on this particular issue at Policy and Resources, and we were advised that we would get further information back to that committee. So just so that you're aware of that. Councillor Wood, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 14. It's to do with the common goods. It was really just on the management response where it states that a Lorburn Community Council member offered his time and expertise. Do we not have this expertise within Council?
Paul, are you answering this? Rona?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we undoubtedly have the expertise within the council, Chair, but the difficulty is that we have now one conveyancing solicitor and one paralegal, and their pressures are quite rightly involved in the major transactions that the council do. In terms of making sure that we've made some progress with the Common Good Register, We are keen to work with the community because they do have knowledge about what may be common good. They do have access to historical records, and we were very grateful for that extra resource to be brought in and to work in partnership with the local community council in furthering that register. We've been offered similar assistance from other areas, and we certainly want to take that up.
Councillor Wood, do you wish to come back?
Yes, thank you, Chair. No, I totally agree with the idea of working in partnership. I think that's very good. But I am a wee bit concerned to hear we don't have capacity within the council to meet these demands. And is this an area that we should be looking at when we start to review our risk assessments?
I think, Councillor Wood, are you asking if it's a risk to the council?
I think it's about the assessment of that risk. We have, with the Strategic Property Services, developed a process for dealing with common good property so that whether a property is common good or not will be hopefully identified at an earlier stage of the process, and that process will be brought to P&R committee hopefully before the summer recess.
Thank you. Could I just ask the external auditors if they are happy with that as well? Because obviously it's been brought up as one of the topics for discussion.
We're happy with that response.
Thank you. Councillor Geddes?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Chair, I take the diametrically opposite view from my colleague, because I think, you know, in the past, Dumfries and Galloway Council has too often rightly, and albeit regrettably, in my opinion, been accused of being a self-serving, a little more than a self-serving bureaucracy. And I think as resources get ever tighter and pressure increases, I think we've got to look at innovative ways of working along these particular lines. And it's good to know that we have such a relationship with this particular community council. And particularly, I like the language in the box. This was gratefully accepted and represents a positive cooperative approach to addressing the issue. I would say, Chair, amen to that, because that's exactly what it does in my view. But I would also make the plea that, you know, we have a third sector out there as well, which in many instances I personally feel is underutilised by the council. And I think that this is one of the issues we've got to look at going forward. We can't, well, to parrot the Chief Executive, you know, he's indicated that there'll be areas of activity where we may have to, you know, literally withdraw from. Now, that will have implications and impacts on the communities in Dumfries and Galloway. And I think that, you know, if in fact going down this particular route would assist us at the appropriate future time or times in mitigating that type of impact, I think that's exactly the type of innovative working that we've got to be identifying. Yes, do due diligence, look at risk assessments, etc., but pursue it and implement it where it's possible to do so, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Geddes. I think your remarks are well received by the committee. Any further members? Okay, can we move to the recommendations then, please? Okay, so 2.1 and 2.2. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, members. We're going to move on to item number 5, Personal Data Breach Report to the Information Commissioner. Are you taking us through this report? Have you got anything further you wish to add to the report before we take questions?
There's nothing much I'd like to add to it. I think it just shows that I think every time we have an instance like this, and thankfully they aren't very often, that the council does take it seriously. We do like to debrief the incidents quite comprehensively, and we do like to sort of improve our practices. So one of the things that I now do twice a week is I now chair an FOI panel where we try to triage all the, we triage all the incoming new requests, and we identify those that may pose a risk, and we put certain controls, additional controls that are highlighted in the report in place. And we've been doing this for a few weeks, and touch wood, so far it seems to be identifying things that we might not have picked up in the past, and we're asking for extra things to be checked. So when they come back to us at the day 15, day 19 point, as a panel which has legal on it and other experts in the council, we can try and reassure ourselves as much as reasonably possible that we've done everything we can to mitigate the chance of any future accidental release.
Thank you. Members, questions? No questions? Councillor Wood?
Just one small one, that was to ask, this new system that's been put into place, has it been trialled?
Martin, would you like to answer that?
Can I just check with the councillor chair which new system? Because there was a few things we did under item 1. The first one was more of a financial control, which is Paul's side. If it's about the additional management controls, then that sits with me.
It's the additional management controls.
Yeah, no, they're working. So when we get the information back, it comes back into the panel. We get reassurance that the manager responsible is signing it off. So they've been through their own series of checks. So that might include a bit of dip sampling. It might include going back to the contact within their own service to make sure that all reasonable checks have been done. Once we're reassured, then we'll do our own checks at the panel, identifying if there's any risk, whether there's any further exclusions, whether there's any further redactions need to be put in place. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to feel pressured at the day 15, day 19 point to take any risks. So as a panel, we're quite risk averse, and I think we'd be quite happy to reject. We haven't yet, but we will reject any that we're not satisfied with. And if that means we're a day or two late with hitting a target, I think we're all quite happy to be a day or two late, but be reassured that we've got the checks in place, rather than perhaps take a bit of a risk and say we'll try and hit the day 20 target with an unknown in there.
Thank you for that. Can I just be clear that the training in FOI in particular is being carried out appropriately, and everybody who has a duty to work within that service actually gets continuous training?
Absolutely. We target training at different people across the council, but at the basic level, every member of staff has to sign a confidentiality agreement and make sure that they've been through some security training. Now we're moving to the flexible online learning, the system that was referred to earlier. The package that we previously did using videos, and it was online, we're now putting straight onto the flow system. So not only will there be the ability to track who's done it, if they haven't done it for a certain period, we can go back through the line manager and say it's now time for some individuals to be refreshed on it. Likewise, if there's any additional learning through any other changes in legislation, any other best practice, we can change that training and insist that all staff go back in and do the package again.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McKee, do you want to come in on that?
It's just it's this carry on of freedom of information, and it seems to be a case of it says what do they know under freedom of information? That's very vague. There's no ownership there that I can see. And how can they justify just coming in and asking the question of wanting all this information if they can't prove a need for it? It's an awful waste of our time, surely.
Councillor McKee, it's actually now legislation that if somebody does wish to ask a question, then they're entitled to do so. I understand that some of the information doesn't, unless it's specific and it falls into the right category, then you don't actually have to respond. But if it is specific and it falls into the right category, you do have to respond, and we have a duty as a council to do that.
But my point is that there's no specific name asking for it. It's just a website asking for this information, and should we be responding to that sort of thing? As I say, it's not a waste of time, surely.
Mr. Ogilvie, would you like to answer that?
I wish this wasn't being recorded and we could be honest about it. Sometimes is frustrating, but the chair's absolutely right. We have to respond. It's an open and transparent council, and if it's a legitimate request, we will look to exclude if we can, but obviously if it's a legitimate request, we have to respond. The way that these websites work is a user, a member of the public, will create an account with them and fill in the details online, and this company in particular, and there are other companies like it, will put the requests out, and that might be, in Scotland's case, to all 32 local authorities. And we will all be responding, and the information goes back in from our system and gets propagated onto their website for anyone to see. And that's, I'm afraid, just the way that it works. Even though we might not be clear exactly why they're asking, if it's a legitimate request, we have to respond.
Derek, would you like to add anything to that?
Just for the record, we just need to assure members that we fulfil our obligations under the legislation and therefore it's imperative that this committee has that assurance that any obligations placed on the council are being fulfilled, whilst acknowledging that it does create a resource demand that we've talked about earlier, and that's acknowledged. However, what we are doing, as we've said in this report, is ensuring that first and foremost, going forward, we minimise the risk of releasing inappropriate data and the subsequent consequences that creates for workload. So you're quite right that we need to be diligent. However, we also need to be clear of our legal requirements and can assure members that we're fulfilling these appropriately.
Thank you. Councillor Dryburgh, do you want to?
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm just looking at 3.6 Information Commissioner's decision, and it's the last part of that particular paragraph that no further action is necessary at this stage, and there was no distress caused to the affected data subjects. I'm just wondering if there's a time frame that they can come back and say that, you know, we want to take this further, or is there another stage in this particular route that the individual's taken?
I'm not aware of any time frames. I don't think there has been yet a time when if there was other members of the public making a complaint, and if it was linked to this one, they might reopen. But the information has been withdrawn, and as I say, it'd probably be unlikely now we would have further associated complaints.
Councillor Geddes, did you want
Thanks, Chair. Going back to Mr. Crichton's comments, I mean, I find them particularly helpful and reassuring. However, as has already been mentioned, you know, some of these requests can pose or can have significant resource implications for the council, and I would like to think that in appropriate circumstances it would be a defence on the part of a local authority or a body covered by the legislation to say that this would impose a disproportionate amount of expense on the receiving authority, for want of a better term, and in these circumstances, coupled with the relevance perhaps or the validity of the request, that we would be justified in saying no, we don't feel in these particular circumstances that it's appropriate that we comply with the request, notwithstanding, as I'm sure all of us have already indicated this morning, you know, signing up to the concept of openness and transparency. So I would like some comment from Derek, through you, Chair, if I may, on that point.
Mr. Crichton?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Geddes. The point's well made, and to take that to its conclusion, you're absolutely right that there are occasions when we can, with the support of the legislation, exempt requests that have been made, and the reasons for that are set out in the legislation, and therefore, if that is appropriate, and ultimately the Commissioner supports that position, that is a course of action that we would take, and quite clearly will continue to do so going forward, especially given the financial challenge facing the organisation.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, can we move to the recommendations, please? 2.1, note. Good. 2.2 and 2.3 to note. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 6, internal audit reports that we have had issued separately to this set of papers. There were 4 reports, I believe, that we've all had, and I'm sure there'll be some questions to ask on these reports. Have you got anything you wish to add to the reports that are in front of us?
No, Chair, other than this is the first meeting at which we tried to achieve the protocol agreed about circulation dates. So I hope all members should have received copies of the internal audit reports a fortnight before the committee, which is designed to assist you with being able to have the time to look at the reports and come to an understanding of what they're saying.
Councillor Geddes?
I would like to compliment Kevin and his staff, Chair, along these lines. Yes, we did receive them timelessly. I think it was particularly helpful, and I think that is a course of action that, you know, perhaps other departments who are preparing reports for committees should take note of. I would also like to think, Chair, that we'll deal with these reports sequentially.
Any further questions, or can we move on to the first of the reports? Okay. The first one, main financial systems. Any questions? Councillor Dryburgh?
Not so much a question, Chair, but in 4.1.4 that the 3 recommendations in the 2014 audit report had been addressed, and excuse me, that's pleasing to see, and hopefully with the follow-up audits in future years, that anything that's found will be easily done as good. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor McKee?
Just a couple of things, Chair. I thought computers were supposed to reduce paperwork, but they seem to increase it. 4.1.7, they're having to print off the pension increase matrix and get it signed off by a processor and checker. Is there no some other way where that could be? The checks obviously have got to be done, but can you avoid paperwork? And the other wee bit was, why do we have to do manual updates covering such things as pay awards, trade union deductions, etc.? Why are they no? Is there no an automatic button you press and they're updated to the necessary level?
Mr. Geraghty, can you answer those questions?
I'm very happy to, Chair. Yes, at 417, in fact, the concept behind the matrix, it's a list, it's a piece of paper. The concept behind the matrix is actually to reduce the amount of printing and paper that's required. The difficulty for auditors are, you have to have a scheme of control which includes checks. Then you have to have some evidence that checks have actually been carried out. It's all very well saying, yes, we did the checks, and then there's nothing to show. If that happens, we have to do something called substantive testing, which means we go in and we re-perform whatever the thing was to prove that it was correct. And if you find any that have errors, then you conclude that the checking arrangements either didn't take place or were ineffective. So what you're looking for to simplify the audit process, reduce the burden, the demand, and reduce the paperwork is some kind of evidence. And the evidence is to produce off all the documentation or to come up with basically a tick list, a grid list, which shows that the check has been done, who it's been done by, when it was done by, and they tick it off. So in fact, the matrix that you referred to is a simplification of requirements, not an addition of complexity. Revenues are very helpful to us in particular, as well as other services, in terms of challenging us and saying, well, what, you're saying you need this, what exactly, do we need to produce? And they're very good at adapting requirements so they can meet what we need, but also cut down the bureaucracy as far as they're concerned. And Pay and Employment Services in this case as well, that they're beginning to take that approach as well, rather than have lots of bits of paper produced to satisfy auditors. We've agreed with them, control sheets and these sorts of things work quite well. So that matrix is quite good. The second thing about manual updates, particularly to the payroll system, yes, I mean, you have something called standing data. So something like trade union deductions are effectively put in manually once a year, and then they're removed from pay. They're obviously voluntary contributions and so on, but other things. Now, some areas lend themselves to automation. One of the areas that's mentioned elsewhere in this report is pensions increases, for instance. There's still an element of manual intervention in that. There's a lot of work involved in getting pensions increases in, and it's significantly a manual process. But part of the plan was hopefully to get the pension system itself to work out the uplifts for pensioners each year, and that didn't happen, unfortunately, in the last 12 months due to various pressures on that team. But it's an objective that they're working on to try and simplify. So we do look at, the difficulty for us is that any manual process of this kind, where you put standing data in manually, could have errors in it. And if it's got errors in it, everything that's paid using that parameter can then have an error in it, and it can be quite a mess to sort out. So it's a higher risk area. Manual input is always a higher risk area, so we always give it a lot of attention and make sure the process is sound and it works correctly.
Thank you. Councillor Wood?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. It's to ask if it would be appropriate for the committee to recognise and record on the last paragraph the 2 accreditations that have been awarded by the Chartered Institute of Professional Payroll Professions, and also award in January of 2015, and that's getting the payroll assurance scheme kite mark. And just to elaborate on that, could you elaborate what is that kite mark and what does it really mean at the end of the day for this council?
Kevin?
I'm sorry, Chair, I don't know the details of that. That's a bit shameful of me, but they are. We noted it. I mean, they were quite chuffed. I think they were quite pleased with it and felt it represented a an indication of professionalism and these sorts of things. So, but I confess I didn't take the trouble to discover exactly what assessment was involved in that. But I can get you a note of it if you'd like after the committee. We'll put something round if the chair agrees.
Yes, I think all members would probably be very happy to hear exactly what those awards are for. Councillor Geddes, did you want in? No. No. Okay, thank you. Can we move to the recommendations then, please? Oh, for this particular one, just happy to note that. Okay. Right, can we move on to the travel and subsistence payments, please? Members' questions? Councillor Dryburgh?
No, again, not so much a question, Chair, but perhaps an ask that when you look at 5.1.7, forms should be submitted on a monthly basis and must be authorised by an appropriate officer. I think that may be highlighted again to all employees who actually and members who actually put forms actually in, because this could actually add to some of the work that's been the TNS group actually do. So I know that in some cases 3 months of TNS actually come in, and I think it's just to highlight and advertise it should be done on a monthly basis.
Thank you. I think that would be an appropriate request. I think all members and staff should be aware that it does cause additional work, and it would be helpful if it was done timelessly. Vice Chair?
Just on the back of that, on page 6, it's about multiple claims. You know, that seems to be causing a bit of a concern as well. And I do know that even, members do that sometimes. And I just wonder if that could be tightened up a bit as well, or if that you don't see that as a problem.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we take the view that it inevitably is more difficult to authorise a claim if it's of some antiquity. So when employees, they don't every month have the opportunity perhaps to complete their claim form, and as the claim form grows, perhaps those who are doing a lot of mileage, it becomes more difficult to put together. So there's lots of reasons for doing this monthly. As I say, there's some suggestion that some employees like to hold on to them so that they get a single lump of money, so to speak, which is I found a bit strange, but we're well advised that happens. So, but I think the challenge here is if you present a manager with 3 or 4 claims dating back 3 or 4 months, I don't think they're in a stronger position to certify it, to authorise it, because they don't know exactly where people have been. There's more work involved in it. Sort of stuff. So regular claims and single claims a month are very much desired, and that will be included in the guidance. You'll see that recommendations include issuing updated guidance. So that point will be emphasised in the guidance when it's forthcoming.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? I have a couple of questions. Oh, sorry, Councillor McKee, would you like to ask a question?
5.3.8, accuracy of mileage claims. There were 3 claims for excess miles, but no checks could be carried out as there were no details of the old and new base, so we couldn't verify. Was that excess mileage still paid? And if it was, that must cause concerns. My understanding was that a number of years ago, this council agreed mileage claims would be office to office or home to wherever their office to destination, or home to destination, whichever be shorter. And I'm concerned that this is maybe not happening now. And it also says pool cars are supposed to be tried as a first option. This is regularly not happening. I think we've got to tighten up on these things, that if they're happening. But the claim for excess miles, it'd be interesting to know if it was paid or whether that was refused.
I'm presuming that it was paid according to the documents that we've got today. And just on the back of what Councillor McKee's asking, I have serious issues with 5.3.8 and on all of what's on this paper. Actually, I find it quite disturbing, and I do note that there's actions that have been put in place after the internal audit's been done to try and tighten up on the issues here. But I would quite like to hear from the internal auditor exactly his thoughts are on this.
Yes, Chair. On the specifics of this excess mileage, perhaps it's a drafting difficulty. We looked at paid claims. That was the basis of the audit. So the sample was drawn from paid claims. So yes, this was a paid claim. The point we were making here was we were unable to verify the correctness of that mileage. What we were picking up overall was that managed claims are okay, but in some cases we had questions about, they appeared to us to be excessive. You can use Google Maps very simply to check mileage between 2 points. Now, obviously, sometimes people take a different route or perhaps call into another office on the way, and the concern for us was that is not recorded. So when you come to a simple check to say they left Dumfries, they went to Stranraer, and they've recorded 110 miles, we all know that's not the correct mileage, so there must be another explanation. There was no explanation on the form, so we're in a position of saying, well, that looks excessive. It doesn't mean it's excessive, but it does look excessive. For excess miles, normally what's agreed is somebody's contract changes and they're given a new base. Then the mileage that's agreed as excess miles is the difference between the travel that they used to have to make and the travel they now have to make. And that tends to be fixed. So one of our concerns would be, well, okay, excess miles should always be the same amount for each day or for each thing involved. So this claim was authorised by somebody, and we have to assume that they were satisfied that the excess miles that were being claimed were correct. All we're saying here is that we were unable to check that because we had no information about what had been agreed as the excess mileage figure or what the old and the new basis were. If that had been mentioned, we could have done our own calculation and worked it out. So I'm sorry if it's slightly misleading to imply that there was something irregular about that. It's simply we couldn't complete the audit in connection with that claim because we didn't have the details to allow us to do so. Okay. On the other points, Chair, yes, pool cars should be used wherever possible. We're being told that some people, for convenience or whatever, tend to prefer to use their own cars. That's something that needs to be challenged. There is a report coming shortly on the pool car scheme, and that's got an interesting resonance for this. But again, overall, it wasn't terrible, let's put it that way. The check on travel and subsistence claims wasn't a dreadful audit, but it was disappointing. We were quite disappointed that some of the standards that we would expect to see didn't appear to be there. So that's not to say people are cheating on their expenses or getting away with things. It just means we can't have the confidence that the system is a system that challenges people and makes sure that they're only claiming correct miles and they're only claiming subsistence appropriately. So the guidance, the thrust of this audit is to say, let's get better guidance out, let's get clearer rules established and get that sorted out. And I think my concern sat around authorization within departments. It's a broad criticism rather than a specific criticism, but it didn't appear to me that the authorization process was rigorous enough. It should be quite tight. We should see no problems. Auditors should be able to pick up a sample of travel and subsistence claims and have no questions about them because all of the processes that have taken place prior to that should be effective, and we weren't seeing that. So the other recommendation we're making in this report is to say that services need to start scrutinising a sample of their own claims internally, because I think this is an area where there's vulnerability to criticism both at an individual level and what the council pays and its systems and processes. It'd be very, very easy to make strong criticism of the council in this area. So it does need to be tight, in our opinion. We've had very good response from management on it. They've agreed with the recommendations and the timescales involved that we suggested to them that they think they can achieve. So there is a real effort at the moment, a reset going on, making sure this is correct. We should make it clear that we're not talking about very substantial sums of money in connection with subsistence and the like. It's not very many people claim subsistence, but again on that front we were not satisfied with the explanations being given and so on in some cases. So again, standards need to improve and the guidance will achieve that.
Thank you, Kevin. Obviously, I know that you've put some corrective measures in place, but as chair of this committee, I think this is of significance that the service committee should be made aware that there is an issue. The service committee should be made aware that there's an issue over this and that you have actually asked for corrective measures to be put in place. Because, for instance, we have got some home care workers signing other home care workers' travel expenses. And I just think that it would be remiss of us as a committee not to just flag up to the other service committees that we feel quite strongly that this needs to be addressed. I understand you have suggested measures to be put in place, and I would want an assurance that we would do a follow-up on that in a few months' time to just actually check that that is being carried out. I know the Vice Chair wants in, so have you got a specific question?
Well, it's just about the actual form. I just wonder how appropriate it is if it's changed over the years. If, you know, if you've looked at it as a means to make it easier for people to fill it in, but also for managers to check it. And you're going to move, I see, to a self-service functionality within the HR Imperial system, which is going to be online claims forms. That's going to be quite a step for quite a lot of people. And I just wonder, are you going to run two, you know, paper ones and online ones for a bit? Or
I think it's a move to the self-serve thing is a good thing. That will allow us to strengthen the information demanded on the form and so on. To me, it's slightly, I have a slight concern, which, as I said, we've not explored the detail of how this is going to work yet. But the authorization process, which I already see as not terribly strong, my concern is, well, is this, managers are going to get a thing that pops into their inbox asking for an authorization. And I've got concerns about, well, okay, what verification work are you going to do on this? What checks are you going to carry out? If it's as simple as pressing yes without looking at it, we've actually got a reduction in control potentially. So I'm working with Pay and Employment Services on trying to make sure that this works. And as I say, what I think the way to get a better standard is to require services to carry out their own checks and to scrutinize them. There is an element of education of managers, making sure that they understand the rules about travel and assistance and require their employees to adhere to them. There is no doubt that some managers are of the wrong impression as to what can go into a claim and what is valid and these sorts of things. Then there isn't enough rigor on it. Ideally, they would all come to audit for authorization, but we're not resourced for that. So, and anyway, it would be inappropriate for us to do it. But you know, we're pretty hot on what can go into a claim and what isn't, what can't. And we don't see there being a lot of discretion. But in other parts of the councils, I think there are elements of, well, okay, I trust the person and this sort of thing. Going to go, but actually, you know, that's not good enough. So the electronic claims system will present some challenges, I think, from a control point of view. From an administration point of view, it will be a great development. And if we can hook that into an improvement on standard at the same time, that will be what we'll try and do, certainly.
Thank you. I have Councillor Geddes and then Councillor Dryborough.
Chair, can I suggest a more immediate and direct way rather than sort of this committee, you know, sending a reference to the various other service committees, etc. And that, to my mind, would be for you, as chair of this committee, in conjunction with Kevin, to write in appropriate terms to all heads of departments and to copy the chair and vice chair of the service committees into your correspondence. And I think that you know, and you know, going back to the point that Kevin's making, you know, if I am having read the report in detail, having listened, you know, to his comments, it's not a question. You know, it's basically a lack of control, and we're not sitting here today saying that, you know, people are at it, they're on the take and all the rest of it. We're not saying that under any circumstances. But yes, there are issues here which have come up today. We're rightly, you know, concerned about them. And I think, personally, I think, Chair, with the greatest respect to you, rather than referring it from here to a service committee, it would have a more immediate and direct impact if you, as chair of this committee, were to write in appropriate terms to all departments or all heads of departments and to copy, out of courtesy, the chair and vice chair of the relevant committees and service committees into it. And I would offer that as an alternative suggestion, Chair.
I'm happy to do that if the members are happy with that. Councillor Dryborough?
It was the same.
Okay. Right, I'm very... Oh, sorry, Vice Chair.
do you think we should look at this in 18 months' time or something? You know, have it brought back to us and see?
I absolutely think that we need to review, and further review will need to be carried out. What would be your normal timescale for that?
Something like this, Chair, that's a, you know, high reputation risk. Not a high financial risk, it's a high reputation risk. We would look at this roughly every 3 years or so. We have got the follow-ups, you know, the recommendations, tracking, reporting that will come through. At that stage, you know, there should have been substantial progress, if not full achievement of revised guidance, and services who may delay this internal checking until the new guidance is available, but there should have been substantial progress on that. So I would give it a year after that. If the committee is particularly keen to see a re-audit done, then I would say, well, about a year after the recommendations have been confirmed as going in, we'll look at it then and we'll get a confirmation that standards have been improved.
Members, are you happy with that? Okay, thank you. Okay, can we just have an update on what we've agreed for that particular paper? Are you able to do that?
We've agreed that Chair will write terms to all of the departments and copy the chairs and vice chairs of the service committees in, and this will be reviewed in a year's time.
Thank you. Members, are you happy with that? Councillor Driver?
Chair, there was obviously the communication that TNS form should be in monthly to all employees.
Sorry, absolutely, that needs to be added in as well. Thank you for that. Okay, we'll move on to the review of the pool car scheme now. Members' questions? Councillor Gilroy?
Just looking at our pool cars available for use when required at 5.5. Just noticing in Dumfries that on a Monday, they seem to sit quite a lot of the time. There's quite a lot that I don't know what happens and I don't know why. I don't know whether there's too many cars. There's 41 I see. Whereas the others, if you look at all the other places, they're all under 5. You know, said the cars that did not move. Whereas in Dumfries, there are more, and I just wonder if we've got too many.
Kevin?
Chair, yes. I mean, the Dumfries number represents a couple of locations. So bear in mind that's not all sitting outside this building here we're talking about Wood Bank and so on, and Irish Street. And yes, it is high. I was perplexed by that myself as well, but I don't think it's critical. I would not say, the question I actually thought a member was going to ask was, why can't I get a pool car when I want one? Because I have that experience too, is I can't get a pool car when I want one, you know, certainly at short notice. So, but my colleague was at pains to point out that no, the evidence is that cars are available, and this is just a snapshot picture, but he picked up that, look, it's interesting that on Mondays and Fridays, there are, in the Dumfries area, in the Dumfries group, there are more cars available. He also pointed out that during holiday time as well, it's interesting, there are more cars available. It's you know, it's a perplexing issue, and getting exactly the right number of cars would probably be beyond any of us, I think, to deliver. What's interesting is that, you know, the concern, remember the last time we reported this, pool cars had not made their expected mileages. They were brought in on the basis of doing 15,000 miles a year, and they hadn't achieved that, and the consequences of that were that the cost of a pool car, of achieving mileage in a pool car, was exactly the same as paying the employee the going rate at the time, which was 40 pence. So they were both coming out at 40 pence a mile. There's been a significant improvement since that time, and we are seeing for each mile done, well, perhaps not single miles, but you know, for each day, on average, pool cars are delivering savings to the council, and that's important. So we're very clear that the pool car scheme is meeting and delivering its objectives, which was to try and get the cost down. Sometimes there are arguments that we should have more pool cars, you know, that we should eat into the grey mileage figure, which remains quite high. But we start to get into complexities about car locations and people and offices and these sorts of things. Attacking it from the other end, the travel expenses end, actually may be more productive, I think. It may be possible, if you squeeze as hard as possible on travel and expense claims, and you challenge employees who are making claims in terms of saying, well, why didn't you use a pool car? You know, can you prove the one wasn't available? Show me that you actually looked and you checked, these sorts of things. That's the way, perhaps, to eat into grey miles a bit. But the pool car scheme, we're very happy to report it's a good scheme, it works, and mostly people are satisfied with it.
Thank you. Councillor McKee and then Councillor Wood.
That was interesting. I think pressure needs to be put on staff to use them. Under 2.2, you've got possible use of vehicles for personal use, including taking vehicles home, associated tax implications. Is there insurance implications there as well? Because I know that where I used to work, or I was employed, they had an issue where after stopping time, the insurance stopped as well. unless it was authorised. This grey mileage, that's an interesting thing. I'm glad you raised it. You maybe tell us just exactly what it is. Is there a way where, I don't know if pool cars, how their information kept on computer or not, but when somebody cancels, could they not have a list of somebody that's tried to get one and couldn't get one, and pass it on and that type of thing, and increase the use that way? Because you're talking, Councillor Gilroy raised the issue in Dumfries where a lot of people are, pool cars are now being used on a Monday, and it may be that whatever they were going to do has been cancelled, but somebody else could use it if they were allowed, and it might have reduced the usage of their own personal cars. And this is the other one's marched against authorisations for vehicles to be taken to home addresses. Is there a note of authorisation for that? I have concerns sometimes about when you see pool cars going about, or is it somebody just using it for their transport to work and otherwise. Thanks very much.
Kevin?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, these points are important. Grey mileage is basically mileage done in employees' own cars. It won't have escaped members' attention the remark about the contribution to grey mileage for the Chief Exec's service made by members. You guys do the most grey mileage, but that's no surprise. You're usually travelling from home. Pool cars are not, around the corner available, so you're travelling in your own cars. But that's what grey miles is. Grey miles is basically own car mileage. The pool car scheme was originally brought in to do something like, I think it was 1 million miles out of 3.5 or 4 at the time, sort of thing. So, and what's generally happened is the total mileage that is being done on council business has shrunk significantly. As a result, the pool car mileage now forms a higher proportion than it had originally been intended. So overall, mileage is coming down, mostly at the grey mileage end as well. So that's quite good. In terms of cancellations, yes, this is referenced in the report where we were concerned that people book a car and then cancel it at the last minute and not use it, and that deprives another user of an opportunity to use it. The fleet team try and recycle the cars in those circumstances. It does depend on a couple of things. First of all, getting the notification through in sufficient time for them to be able to check that somebody was disappointed and can now be offered a car. But the second thing is there is a resource issue for them. They don't automatically have the staff. They haven't got anybody on this as a full-time job, so to speak. So if it can be done, if the staff have got the ability to do it, to recycle cars, they'll do so. But it isn't consistent. It doesn't always happen. So that's another reason why sometimes we see cars sitting and you kind of go, well, I wanted a car for that day and I couldn't get it, sort of thing. And I made alternative arrangements and then there's a car sitting there. But it's within the natural sort of range of things, isn't it? Sometimes meetings get cancelled and so on. So, but cancellation generally it is not a significant problem. We didn't detect that in the work that was done. We tried to have a look at it and so on. And about taking vehicles home, there are implications for it. I think less from the insurance side. I'm going to say something that's perhaps out of turn, but these cars are self-insured, and to some extent, how we deal with things is in most situations we'll say a car is insured. Now, if somebody takes one rallying in Kirship Forest and wraps it around a tree, I think everybody would agree that there's no way that was covered by insurance. But even when cars are used out of hours, I don't think insurance represents a significant threat, because in most situations the council is going to accept liability for something unless the person's been reckless or manifestly, they were drunk and stole a car, that sort of thing. So insurance is less of a problem. We have got Inland Revenue taking a keen interest in the use of council vehicles out of hours, and we've had some challenges from them, and there are some tax implications for it, which may prove to be, or could, if then this is not properly managed, expensive for the council. So the system we have is that, I stay in Carlisle, so if I'm travelling south, I'll take a pool car home and park it at my house overnight and then go on to the journey involved in that. Now that, I need that to be authorised. My line manager would authorise that once I've explained what I'm doing. That authorisation goes through to fleet management, who have it on record. So when I start the car up in the morning and it's at Carlisle, it reports it into the system and they check it against that authorisation. There are not a significant number of vehicles being used from home addresses which do not have authorisations, and where they are, they're reported in. So there's quite a good check on that. that. So there's not much comment in the report on this, but that's because we were pretty happy with the arrangements, and they seem to us to be adequate to protect the council from risk.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wood?
Thank you, Chair. It's within 2.2 and 2.3. I was wondering about the procurement arrangements, why you haven't included that, and also the private mileage. When I look at 2.2, you've got vehicle tracking, including the monitoring of vehicle speeds. Can you advise me on the legal implications? Because I would imagine some of these vehicle speeds may have exceeded the areas of speed that they should be doing. Do you inform the police when you have such a situation?
In the previous report, we were very concerned to note that there were examples of pool cars being driven at excessive speed. We had a case where somebody was doing 92 down the M74, and to us that was just unacceptable conduct on the part of the employee. So we raised that. At that time, employees were getting, managers were getting emails. So if a car had been involved in excess speed, the manager was getting an email pointing that out, and usually the employee was confronted. That we don't report it to the police. The police are well aware of the fact that these vehicles have tracking, and I have absolutely no doubt that if, heaven forbid, there was an accident involving a council vehicle, they would be asking us for the vehicle logs and the tracking on it, and that would be a consideration in any determination for prosecution that they would make. Now, employees need to understand that. You do get some systems actually regulate the top speed that's available in a vehicle. We don't have that at the moment, but what we are getting in is a new tracking system which deals not just with speed, but also driver behavior. So things like doing U-turns in inappropriate places or nipping up a one-way street in the wrong direction and those sorts of things. And they will be tracked and highlighted. What exactly we're going to do with that information yet has not been developed. But driver training and driver behavior are critical issues for risk to the council. So that's why we're getting that system in, so that we can be more responsive and more effective in dealing with poor driver behavior.
I was considering using a pool car, but certainly not now. If it's all down to driver behaviour, goodness knows what it might bring up. Councillor Wood, do you want to come back on that?
No, that was well answered. It was really the procurement as well. Is that going to be a separate audit?
Thanks, Chair. No, I apologise. I've lost the plot on the procurement. Originally, the plan was to purchase the vehicles. And in fact, what happened was they were leased. And that generated a saving. And when the scheme was being set up, an amount of money was top sliced from various departments to fund the pool. And DG First very creatively leased it. So there was a saving involved there. So I took my hat off to them for using the opportunity. I think they're leased. I think the vehicles at the moment are leased, which is cost effective for us. And as you know, the lease cost for vehicles depends on mileage done and these sorts of things. But I think the lease arrangement, when you buy a block of cars, when you buy the sorts of numbers for this, the discounts you get from the manufacturers are significant, and the unit cost of the vehicles can be very, very attractive. But no, we were happy. I mean, last time, as I say, we asked about the procurement arrangements and so on. And whilst they were unexpected, we were satisfied that they'd been done properly. So we didn't introduce it as a question this time.
Vice Chair?
Thank you. I have just a couple of questions. One is about the service manager managing the NHS fleet, which provides some efficiencies. NHS cars are not available for council staff, but are council cars available for NHS staff? So where are the efficiencies and why do we do it?
Yes, I think it's one of these initiatives where it was felt partnership working had many advantages. I think there had been a time at which the two parties had actually seriously contemplated running a single fleet and managing a single fleet, but it didn't come to pass. So our fleet manager helps them under a partnership arrangement by working with them from time to time. It's a small cost saving because we get to rebook her salary. But at the moment, there isn't joint use of vehicles. I think certain complexities arise that we'd use different types of vehicles in many cases and these sorts of things. So as things stand, they're separate. But, within the beginnings of such partnership, further things can develop. So it is quite possible it'll grow and develop and further functions will be included.
Which was about the servicing. You say the vehicles are serviced by the council, so I would assume that it's out at Garrick here and in Stranraer, but where else do they go? Or do they just come into a central point to be serviced?
Yeah, they're done at the vehicle workshops across the region, so far as I know. So yes, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Driver.
Thanks, Chair. Just coming back to the point on the NHS and Council, perhaps it's something we can highlight as Audit and Risk to the Interim Board and the discussions that are going to happen there, because there is potential for savings there, which could be put on to the care of social work and home carers.
Okay, can we agree the pool car review? I don't think we've got anything to add into that. And we'll move on to the self-directed support direct payments. Members, any questions? Kevin, is there anything you would like to add to this report?
No, Chair, although I never pass up the opportunity to speak, so I'm sorry. The basic message of this report is that we could be doing better. Yep. And I'm very pleased to say the recommendations, the discussion we had with management and that flowed from that and our findings have been productive. So we've got an undertaking to have a close look at this, the parties to work together. This should be to the benefit of the service users, and we felt that we weren't achieving the objectives. So, and I think that's been accepted, and there's now a renewed enthusiasm for making this work very well.
Thank you. Okay, members, can we move to the recommendations, please? And we can note, and we'll make all the additional comments that have been made. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 7, Outturn against Internal Audit Plan and the 2014-15 Controls Assurance Statement. Members will acknowledge the work of the internal audit. It's concerned with the effective, efficient operations, reliable reporting arrangements and compliance with the laws and policies. So Kevin, on behalf of the committee, thank you for what you've done this year. Members, have we got any questions?
Not a question, but a comment again. Well done to Kevin and his team for managing their time appropriately, especially with all the different things that we asked for, and I'm sure other people asked for within the council.
Thank you. Well, if we've got no questions, can we move to the recommendations then, please? Happy to note 2.1 and 2.2. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item number 8, which is Dumfries and Galloway Draft Annual Governance Statement 2014-15. Members are asked to review the statement and to note the draft, and if there's any additions that members wish to see in the draft, then I'd be more than happy to have those put forward now. Councillor Geddes.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think there's one addition which I personally would like to see would be the appropriate reference, Chair, to the Dunmuir Park situation. I'm not suggesting for one moment the fact that it's not in there, there's anything sinister in that, not at all, but I think it would be remiss of us, given the background to this, not in fact to include an appropriate paragraph in our draft governance statement. I would like to think, Chair, my suggestion would be acceptable, and it would be for obvious reasons.
Well, as the governance statement should be open, honest and transparent, I think that is acceptable, certainly by me, to add that in. Is everybody else similarly minded? Yes? Kevin, would you wish to make a comment on that? Rona?
Yes, I'm very happy to add that in as an example of where there was an independent review following a complaint, and where there have been suggested improvements and actions, and we can certainly show that as evidence of how we've dealt with something that perhaps has not gone so well, and certainly it would be evidence of the checks and balances that we've got in place.
Thank you. Well, I would also like to ask as well, I mean, obviously the council's going through major change at the moment, so I just would like to touch base on that and ask in particular about 3.4 on the papers on page 46. I would like to just ask when this committee would receive the scrutiny plan. I believe we're supposed to be having a scrutiny plan. Oh, sorry. Would you?
No, thank you, Chair. Yes, as members of this committee know, annually you receive the scrutiny plan from the local area network. That's all the inspection agencies together drawing down their intelligence from what they have secured from their audits of individual services. That will be coming to the June committee. So what I would assure members of, firstly, that will be your opportunity to satisfy yourself that there's sufficient robustness in the scrutiny plan and the actions going forward. But for the annual governance statement, what you'll be assured of also, members, is that we'll cross-reference that document. So where there are any particular areas identified that should also be included in our annual governance statement, we'll certainly do that. Thank you.
Any further questions, members, or additions? No? Can we move to the recommendations then, please? 2.1, review the annual governance statement, agreed. 2.3, to delegate to the head of corporate support to arrange the necessary revisions, agreed. And 2.4, to note the draft annual governance statement.
I mean, there's only 3 recommendations here, went 2.1 to 2.4, so no 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, just for clarity.
Okay, I think there's a slight drafting error, but so let's go 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3 then. Okay, agreed? Thank you.
Do you need to include that recommendation that was made by Councillor Geddes and agreed?
Yes, well, we could put that in as 2.4. So if we do 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4.
Make it 2.2, nothing like 2.2.
No, we've got to take them in order. Thank you. Okay, we move on to item number 9, Internal Audit Strategic Plan 2015 to 18 and the Annual Plan for 2015 to 16. Kevin, have you got anything you wish to add to this?
Briefly, Chair. Yes, we've been slightly more constrained this year in offering you scope to state preferences for audit work, partly because of the effective rollover from last year. But nevertheless, I think it's important to give you the opportunity to identify issues that you think would benefit from audit work and audit involvement, and that strengthens the plan as a whole because it means it's relevant and appropriate. So it will take a little bit of jiggling about. It would mean dropping perhaps the kinship care audit and perhaps the overtime audit, which had come up as topics last year. Certainly the kinship care audit, there's a new scheme in place. The number of people eligible to receive kinship care payments has reduced. The rules are tighter, so you may feel the risks have reduced in connection with that one. And the overtime one was just on the basis of, well, it's been a few years since we've looked at it, and overtime is obviously a cost that we would want to make sure is appropriately controlled. So certainly there. And the schools audit work, I've cut it down significantly from what we've had in previous years. But again, this is a useful program, but it isn't. It doesn't have a high financial risks or particular difficulty with it. And as we discussed at the last committee, what we have found is that a lot of schools have been telling one another the findings of audit work and have been passing them on. So as we work through various secondary schools, we're finding improvements have already been put in place in response to observations made at other schools. So that the scope within these areas, I think, or indeed in other areas if the members wish, to have a look at the proposal use of time and perhaps to make substitutions.
Thank you. I would like to draw members' attention to page 62, 3.3.5. Obviously, Kevin has elaborated on some of the audits that we had suggested we put in place last year, but suggesting that we may wish to substitute some of those as well. We can select 2, I think, from 3.3.5. So I'm open to suggestions. Councillor Geddes?
I'm grateful to you, Chair. I would suggest, ma'am, that third bullet point, school role forecasting and planning, and the fourth bullet point, Outwith Region social work payments.
I'm happy with both those suggestions. Members? Councillor Dryborough?
So thanks very much, Chair. I'm just looking at the annual plan for 2015 and what Kevin says about the kinship care payments. Obviously, there's issues going on at a sort of national level with this, and it might be appropriate to maybe reduce the planned days for that particular thing. I think also we can probably reduce the planned days for secondary school units, as Kevin says, that there's a discussion between schools on what actually happens for that particular area. I think, however, we need to consider obviously the move to 4 departments as well, and the initial setting up of that should have some form of audit to ensure that we are doing the appropriate steps in that particular place. I think if we were to reduce the secondary school fund, say, to 10 days and the kinship care to 15 days, and there's 30 days, the initial sort of move and making sure that the appropriate steps are taking place both legally and in policy terms, that can be reviewed as well at a certain time throughout the next year.
Kevin, have you got any issues with anything that's been suggested?
No, Chair. The structure, the revised structure, is a corporate risk, from what I remember.
Yes, it is.
So again, there is reporting going on that. But yes, I mean, as a program, as a development program, I think audit can usefully contribute in certain circumstances by, in effect, showing you the state of play. So it would be a report in terms of saying that this is where it's got to. Here's the risk management that's been going on in connection with it, and whether or not our opinion is that sufficient is being done about that. I would be very surprised that this area receives a great deal of very senior level management input. I would be surprised if we were picking up any issues on it, but that would be the point of the audit. If there were concerns that could be looked at, then we'd snag those, certainly.
Chair, I'm pleased that there's a lot of senior management input. I just want to make every opportunity for member input into this as well.
Absolutely. We have to give the strategic direction. You're quite right, Councillor Dryborough. Derek, would you add a comment?
Couldn't leave that uncommented upon. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I certainly agree that would be a useful contribution from the Audit Committee, but it's just to reassure members that the last full council we agreed to establish the Business Transformation Steering Group, which does comprise members, and I'm pleased to say the first meeting of that committee working group is due to start on the 19th of May. So that certainly provides the member involvement, and I am sure scrutiny from members as well. Thank you.
Vice Chair?
Yes, I would like to ask for a review on the waste collection service, given the situation in Wigtonshire. I understand there's a report going to the Wigton Area Committee about what's going on in Wigtonshire with regard to the new waste management collection service. We've also had an unplanned audit, I note, work done, and that's on page 36. So I'm just asking if Mr. Geraghty could provide us a review of why this is going to work across the region. You've already got some work in progress. And I wonder if we could have an idea of whether we're in difficulty, whether it's behind schedule, whether it's going to cost more, and at the end of the day, whether it does actually continue to be feasible, deliverable, and realistic.
Mr. Geraghty?
Yes, Chair, I think we can usefully contribute on this topic. The reference that the Council made to a piece of work that we did under unplanned work in 14-15 related to a very specific assurance that was being sought by the Assistant Chief Exec, now Director of Service, around, it was a fairly detailed and a fairly technical issue. But yes, some elements that puts us in a position, I think, we understand the programme, we understand its objectives and its timescales. So certainly members will be aware that the programme is running later than had been originally intended. The plan had been to have 4 areas with multi-bin systems in by April 2015, and regrettably there's only 1 in place. So I think, yes, I think I'd be very happy to do a report that in effect reviewed the programme or reviewed the project, the multi-bin rollout, and gave you information, if nothing else, as well as our observations, perhaps, which would allow things to perhaps crystallise in one or two areas. So yes, happy with that, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Geddes?
Chair, it's my understanding that both DG First Management Board and also the EEI Committee will be conducting a radical appraisal of the effectiveness or otherwise of this new modus operandi, for want of a better term, which was or is being trialled in Wigtonshire. And while I agree entirely with Kevin that this committee has a locus and a role, would it perhaps maybe not be better to wait until the original scrutiny or appraisal has been carried out by both the client, for want of a better term, or the commissioner, and the contractor, and then, as it were, let's have this committee's submissions and input in the back of that? Merely a suggestion, Chair.
I understand your suggestion, but I would agree that maybe if it was left at the later part of the audit plan, so if we do the others first and then put in the waste management towards the end of the audit plan, then we should be able to link onto the back of what's actually been put forward. I would suggest that that's probably a sensible approach, if everybody's happy with that.
Perfectly content with that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Chair, yes, I think you have the options before you. I don't know the timescale for the review, the service committee review, I presume. So it's a question of timing. If you want something early doors that would be useful to you at this stage and useful to the rest of the council, I would try and move on that quite quickly. If, however, you're content to wait and see how the other project develops and then perhaps revisit this topic, then that's also applicable. So it really is a question of, what's the purpose of the audit? What's the primary purpose of the audit? What are you looking from the audit? If it's about assurance, then yes, it can wait later. If it's more about information and state of play, then perhaps an early adoption of the project would be indicated.
As it was Councillor Gilroy's suggestion, Councillor Gilroy?
I think it is about information and state of play, if I'm being perfectly honest, because we are audit and risk, and if it is a risk, it is a council policy, and it's not happening in the way that it was anticipated. And I think it could be dovetailed. I am sure. I don't think it has to be a separate thing. But I think I don't think we should wait. I think we should be working alongside. If I'm honest, because I think going down the line, it could just take longer and longer. And I think we need to know what's going to happen with it and how we're going to manage it.
Well, it would fit into one of the risk management programmes, in particular on page 67 out of 70, supporting the further development of risk management at corporate service and project level. So I think it would fit in there. So I don't have an issue with that. Councillor Driver?
Well, I do, Chair, because we've been saying over the last several audit and risk committees that we want the service committees to do their scrutiny and their governance of those different things. And I think DG First have said that they want to report back within 6 months from, I think it was the February committee. And then that would, what you suggested before, having it at the end of the year would give other members the opportunity to scrutinise and govern and try and put actions in place from that leading board. So I would like to see that original suggestion of the latter part of the year, that information coming back after other members in different committees have had their opportunity to scrutinise governance and put recommendations forward.
I don't have a particular issue with that. Councillor Gilroy, are you happy with
I don't.
that?
I think a 6 month is fine. What I'm not wanting to see is 18 months. I think we need to be aware of it. So that's fine.
Okay, can we have an agreement on this? Councillor Geddes, do you want back in on this point?
Well, just basically to say that, I agree entirely with the points that Councillor Driver has made, and to respond to Kevin's specific issue, I would see it more a function and role more as assurance based and assurance orientated. But I don't think it's necessary to rely on it, Chair. There's a genuine desire to achieve a consensus, and I'd leave it at that.
I think we can move to the recommendations then. Members are asked to approve the strategic internal audit plan. So are we happy with that, with the amendments that we've put in place? So we're removing or reducing a number of hours, and we're adding in 3 areas to look at, which are school role forecasting and planning, and out with regional social work payments, and the waste management plans that are taking place at the moment in Wigtonshire, and that would be at the latter end of the plan. Members happy with that? Okay, thank you.
Can I interrupt you? I apologise.
Oh, I suppose so.
There are a couple of other areas in the plan where I've said the members might like to indicate. So performance management, we've got a time slot for performance management. We didn't get a candidate for a piece of work last year, so I was looking to try and avoid that same situation arising, that we don't know what we're doing and then we get to the end of the year and we haven't done it. So if perhaps not at this meeting, but perhaps if members want to think about suggestions for what any particular area we could do. The other thing is to note that we have got also a contingency in the plan for health and social care integration. The documents I've seen from the centre imply a role for internal audit which doesn't sit easily with it, in my opinion, nor in the opinion of colleagues in other local authorities. So that's to be resolved, but we've put a time slot in there. So bear in mind that that's also a contingency which may become available to the committee later in the year to be allocated.
I would ask that members consider that, and when we have our next meeting, we could maybe come back to you on that, if that's okay. Members, are you happy with that? Okay, thank you. Okay. Which is just really to do with the training that was cancelled. So just to advise that the training will be rescheduled, and Mr. Crichton will send us out a note on when that will be. Thank you.